Stop for a moment. What if the fear you felt today did not have to follow you into tomorrow? What if the anxiety that keeps replaying in your mind could lose its grip starting right now? Most people will scroll past this moment and carry that weight with them. Do not be one of them. There is a reason you are here. Not by accident, not by chance. Something inside you knows that what you are feeling is not how you were meant to live. The pressure, the overthinking, the quiet fear that shows up when everything gets still. It has been speaking loudly, but it is not the truth that defines you. Right now, there is a battle happening that no one else can see. A battle between fear and faith, between what you feel and what God has already declared over your life. And if you do not confront it, it will continue to shape your decisions, your emotions, and your future. But here is what most people miss. You are not supposed to fight this battle with your own strength. You are never meant to carry this alone. There is a source of light, strength, and unshakable confidence available to you, and it changes everything the moment you truly receive it. In the next few minutes, you are going to step into something powerful. Not just words, not just a prayer, but a shift. A transformation in how you see fear, how you respond to pressure, and how you walk forward with boldness. If you stay here, if you lean in, something inside you will begin to change. The fear that once controlled you will start to lose its authority. The uncertainty that held you back will begin to break, and a new confidence will rise, not from you, but from the presence of God within you. Do not disconnect now. This moment matters more than you think. What comes next will challenge how you see your fear and redefine how you stand in the middle of it. When fear speaks loudest inside the mind, there are moments when everything outside seems quiet, but inside your mind the noise refuses to stop. Thoughts racing, scenarios playing out, questions that never seem to find answers. You try to stay strong, but something keeps pulling you back into uncertainty. And the hardest part is this: no one else can see it. The battle is invisible, but it feels real enough to drain your energy, your focus, and even your hope. Fear does not always arrive as panic. Sometimes it whispers. It plants small doubts that grow over time. It makes you question your path, your decisions, even your faith. It convinces you to hesitate when you should move forward. It tells you to stay silent when you should stand firm. And before you realize it, you are no longer just thinking about fear. You are responding to it, adjusting your life around it. But here is the truth most people overlook. Fear gains strength when it goes unchallenged. The longer it stays unspoken, the deeper it roots itself. And yet, in the middle of that internal storm, there is a powerful shift that can happen. A moment where everything begins to change. Not because the circumstances suddenly disappear, but because your perspective begins to rise above them. This is where something deeper begins. Not surface-level motivation, not temporary relief. Something that reaches into the core of your thoughts and starts to realign what you believe about your situation. Because the real battle is not happening around you. It is happening within you. And if the mind is where fear tries to take control, then the mind is also where faith must be awakened. There is a reason why some people face the same storms, but walk through them with a completely different posture. It is not because they are immune to fear. It is because they have learned how to confront it. They have discovered something greater than the voice that tries to limit them. Right now, you are standing at a turning point. You can continue letting those thoughts dictate your direction, or you can begin to shift your focus toward something stronger, something unshakable. But that shift does not happen automatically. It begins with awareness. It begins with recognizing what is happening inside you. Because once you see the battle clearly, you are no longer fighting blindly. And what comes next will show you exactly how to take that first step out of fear and into something far more powerful. The hidden battle between fear and faith. Inside every moment of uncertainty, there is a silent conflict taking place. It is not visible to the people around you, but it shapes every decision you make. It influences how you respond, how you speak, and how you move forward. This is the hidden battle between fear and faith. They do not fight on equal ground. One feeds on what you see, The other is built on what you choose to believe beyond what you see. Fear is immediate. It reacts quickly. It points to what could go wrong, magnifies risks, and pulls your attention toward the worst possible outcomes. It demands urgency, but offers no peace. It convinces you that hesitation is safety, when in reality, it often becomes a prison. Faith moves differently. It does not deny reality, but it refuses to be controlled by it. It speaks even when the situation looks uncertain. It stands firm when logic alone would tell you to retreat. And most importantly, it invites you to trust something greater than your current understanding. The tension between these two forces is where most people feel stuck. You want to believe. You want to move forward. But there is a voice inside you asking, what if it fails? What if it does not work? What if you are not strong enough? That is how fear maintains control, not by overpowering you instantly, but by slowly introducing doubt until it feels like truth. But here is the turning point. Fear cannot dominate where faith is intentionally strengthened. Faith is not automatic. It is built. It is reinforced through what you choose to focus on, what you choose to listen to, and what you allow to shape your thinking. Every thought you entertain becomes a vote. Every belief you repeat becomes a foundation. So the question is not whether fear exists. It will. The real question is which voice you are feeding. Because whatever you feed will grow stronger. There is a moment where you have to decide, will you allow fear to define your limits, or will you begin to activate a different perspective? One that does not ignore the challenges, but refuses to bow to them. This is where the shift begins to take form. Not outside of you, but within you. And what comes next will take that internal shift and direct it toward something powerful enough to change how you see everything around you. Declaring God as light in moments of darkness. There comes a moment in every internal battle where thinking alone is no longer enough. You analyze, you reflect, you try to reason your way out of the weight you are feeling, but the darkness does not lift. That is because some battles are not meant to be solved only with logic. They require a shift in what you declare, in what you establish as truth over your life. Darkness is not just the absence of light. It is confusion, fear, lack of direction. It clouds your judgment and makes everything feel uncertain. It distorts what is real and amplifies what is not. And if left unchecked, it begins to define how you see your future. But here is where something powerful happens. The moment you stop describing the darkness and start declaring light, everything begins to change. Declaring God as light is not a poetic phrase. It is a spiritual decision. It is choosing to anchor your mind in something that does not fluctuate based on circumstances. Light reveals. Light guides. Light removes the power of what was hidden. When light enters, darkness does not negotiate. It retreats. And this is not about pretending everything is fine. It is about choosing a higher truth in the middle of what does not feel fine. When you declare that God is your light, you are saying that confusion will not have the final word. You are saying that even if you do not see the full path, you trust the one who does. You are shifting your focus from what is unclear to what is constant. This is where many people hesitate. Because declaring light requires trust before clarity. It asks you to move forward before you have all the answers. It challenges the need to control every outcome and replaces it with confidence in a greater presence. But once that declaration is made, something inside you begins to realign. The same situation that once felt overwhelming starts to look different, not because it disappeared, but because your perspective is no longer rooted in fear. You begin to see possibilities where before there were only obstacles. You begin to feel direction where there was only confusion. And most importantly, you begin to experience a sense of stability that does not depend on external conditions. This is the power of shifting from reaction to declaration. And what comes next will take this light and show you how it does more than guide. It rescues, restores, and redefines your understanding of what it means to be truly secure, what it means for God to be your salvation. There is a difference between hoping things will get better and knowing you are not facing life alone. This is where the meaning of salvation begins to move from a distant idea into a present reality. Many people associate salvation only with something eternal, something that happens beyond this life. But there is a deeper layer that often goes unnoticed. Salvation is not only about the future, it is about right now. It is about being rescued in moments when you feel overwhelmed, restored when you feel broken, and sustained when you feel like you have nothing left to give. Think about the moments when everything feels like it is slipping out of your control, when pressure builds, when decisions feel heavy, when uncertainty starts to take over your thoughts. In those moments, the need is not just for answers, it is for stability. It is for something that holds you steady when everything else feels unstable. That is what it means for God to be your salvation. It means that your sense of security is no longer tied to circumstances that can change without warning. It means that even when situations shift, there is a foundation that does not move. It is the difference between reacting to every external pressure and being anchored in something deeper. Salvation is not passive, it is active. It is present in the way you are strengthened to endure what you once thought you could not handle. It is present in the clarity that comes when confusion once ruled your thinking. It is present in the peace that begins to replace anxiety, even before the situation itself changes. And here is what makes this powerful. You do not have to earn it in the moment you need it most. It is not something you achieve through perfect behavior or flawless decisions. It is something you receive by choosing to trust. This is where many people struggle, because trust requires surrender. It requires releasing the need to control every outcome and accepting that there is a greater plan at work, even when you cannot fully see it. But when that shift happens, something changes internally. You stop carrying the full weight of every situation on your own. You begin to move with a different kind of confidence, not because everything is resolved, but because you know you are being guided, supported, and sustained. Salvation becomes more than a concept. It becomes an experience. And what comes next will show you how this experience translates into strength, especially in those moments when you feel emotionally drained and mentally exhausted. Finding strength. When you feel emotionally drained. There are moments when the exhaustion is not physical. Your body may still be moving. Your routine may still be intact, but inside, something feels depleted. Your thoughts slow down, your motivation fades, and even simple decisions begin to feel heavy. This kind of exhaustion is deeper. It reaches the emotional and spiritual core. And the truth is, most people try to push through it. They tell themselves to be stronger, to try harder, to keep going no matter what. But the more they force themselves, the more drained they become. Because real strength does not come from pressure. It comes from source. This is where everything begins to shift. When God is your strength, you are no longer relying only on what you can produce. You are connected to something that does not run out. And that changes the way you respond to exhaustion. Instead of forcing energy that is not there, you begin to receive strength that is not yours. Think about what happens when you reach the point where you feel like you cannot continue. That moment where your mind starts saying, "I do not have anything left." That is usually where frustration begins. But what if that moment is not the end of your capacity, but the beginning of dependence on something greater? Because divine strength does not operate the same way human strength does. Human strength decreases with pressure. Divine strength often increases in the middle of it. This is why some people go through intense seasons and come out stronger. Not because the situation was easy, but because they were sustained in a way that cannot be explained by their own ability. Strength, in this sense, is not about feeling powerful all the time. It is about being held together when everything inside you feels like it is falling apart. It is about continuing forward even when your emotions are not aligned with your actions. And here is something most people do not realize. You do not need to feel strong to be sustained. There are moments when your faith is quiet, when your energy is low, when your emotions are unstable. And still strength is being given, not because of how you feel, but because of who you are connected to. This changes the pressure completely. You no longer need to perform strength. You only need to remain connected. And in that connection, something begins to happen gradually. Your thoughts regain clarity. Your emotions stabilize. Your perspective shifts. What once felt overwhelming begins to feel manageable. Not because the situation changed immediately, but because you are no longer carrying it alone. That is real strength. And as this strength begins to rise within you, something else starts to grow alongside it. Not just endurance, but courage. A different kind of courage. One that does not ignore fear, but stands firm in the middle of it. And that is exactly where the next step begins. The courage that comes from knowing who stands with you. Courage is often misunderstood. Many people think it means the absence of fear, the ability to face everything without hesitation or doubt. But real courage does not begin when fear disappears. It begins when you realize you are not facing it alone. There is a significant difference between standing in front of a challenge by yourself and standing there knowing that something greater is with you. The situation may look the same, the pressure may still exist, but your internal posture changes completely. When you believe you are alone, every obstacle feels heavier. Every decision carries more weight. Every uncertainty becomes more intimidating. But the moment you become aware that God is present with you, something shifts. Fear no longer has the same authority over your thoughts. This is the kind of courage described in Psalm 27. It is not based on personality, experience, or natural confidence. It is rooted in relationship. It is the confidence that comes from knowing that no matter what stands in front of you, it does not stand there alone. Think about how fear tries to isolate you. It makes you feel like everything depends on you. It convinces you that if you do not figure it out, everything will fall apart. It creates pressure by placing the entire responsibility on your shoulders. But courage begins when that weight is lifted. When you understand that God stands with you, you stop seeing challenges as something you must conquer by yourself. You begin to see them as situations you are walking through with guidance, protection, and support. This does not remove difficulty, but it changes your response to it. Instead of reacting with hesitation, you begin to move with intention. Instead of being paralyzed by what could go wrong, you start focusing on what is possible when you are not alone. Your decisions become clearer, your actions become more deliberate, and most importantly, your fear begins to lose its control. Because fear thrives in isolation but weakens in the presence of assurance. This is where courage becomes active. Not just a feeling, but a decision. A choice to move forward even when uncertainty is still present, because your confidence is no longer based on outcomes, but on who is with you in the process. And as this courage grows, it prepares you for something inevitable. There will be moments when opposition rises, when pressure increases, when external voices try to challenge what you believe. But what happens when resistance comes and instead of shrinking, your confidence remains steady? That is the next level, and it will define how you stand when everything around you tries to shake you. When opposition rises, but confidence remains. There will be moments when it is not your internal thoughts that challenge you, but what rises around you. Resistance, criticism, unexpected pressure. Situations that seem to come out of nowhere and test everything you have been building inside. This is where many people lose their stability, not because they lack faith, but because they were not prepared for the intensity of opposition. When things go against expectations, confidence can quickly turn into doubt if it is not deeply rooted. Opposition has a purpose. It reveals what your confidence is built on. If your confidence is based on comfort, it will disappear when discomfort appears. If it is based on control, it will weaken when things move outside your expectations. But if your confidence is rooted in something unshakable, then even when pressure rises, it remains steady. This is the kind of confidence revealed in Psalm 27. It is not fragile. It does not depend on everything going well. It stands firm even when surrounded by uncertainty, because it is anchored in something greater than the situation itself. Think about how opposition tries to affect you. It introduces doubt through external voices. It brings tension into your environment. It creates moments where you question if you should continue or pull back. And this is where the decision becomes critical. Do you allow what is happening around you to redefine what is happening within you? Or do you maintain your position regardless of the pressure? Because confidence is not tested when everything is easy. It is tested when everything challenges it. There is a moment where you have to choose to stand, not because everything makes sense, not because you have all the answers, but because you trust what has been established inside you. This kind of confidence does not come from ignoring reality. It comes from interpreting reality differently. It comes from seeing opposition not as a signal to retreat, but as confirmation that what you are moving toward matters. And here is where something powerful happens. When you remain steady in the face of opposition, fear begins to lose credibility. It can no longer convince you as easily, because you have already faced pressure and did not collapse. You begin to build evidence within yourself that you are supported, sustained, and capable of standing firm. That evidence becomes strength, and as that strength grows, your focus begins to shift again. You move from simply standing against opposition to desiring something deeper. Not just survival, not just endurance, but presence. A place where your confidence is not only tested, but continuously renewed. And that is where the next step begins. The desire to dwell in God's presence above everything else. There comes a point where your focus begins to change. At first, you are trying to overcome fear, to find strength, to stand firm against pressure. But as you move forward, something deeper starts to awaken within you. A desire that goes beyond solving problems. A desire to be in the presence of God, not just in moments of need, but as a constant reality. This is where the shift becomes profound. Instead of asking, "How do I get through this?" you begin to ask, "How do I stay close to God no matter what happens?" The priority changes. The goal is no longer just relief, it becomes connection. Because when you are anchored in God's presence, everything else begins to realign. Fear loses its urgency. Pressure loses its intensity. External circumstances stop dictating your internal state. Not because challenges disappear, but because your center is no longer unstable. This is what makes the message of Psalm 27 so powerful. It reveals a desire that surpasses every other need, to dwell in God's presence, to remain there, to find stability not in changing conditions but in an unchanging source. Think about how most people approach difficult moments. They seek answers. They seek solutions. They seek relief, and while those things matter, they are temporary. Once one problem is solved, another can appear. The cycle continues. But when your desire shifts toward presence, everything changes. Because presence is not temporary. It is consistent. It is available in every moment, in every situation, regardless of what is happening around you. And when you learn to remain there, you begin to experience something deeper than temporary peace. You experience stability. This is where your thoughts begin to settle, your emotions begin to align, your perspective becomes clearer, not because everything is perfect, but because you are no longer disconnected from the source that sustains you. And here is what most people do not realize. You can be surrounded by activity and still remain in that presence. You can face challenges and still carry that peace. It is not limited to quiet moments. It becomes a way of living. But this kind of connection does not happen by accident. It requires intention. It requires a decision to seek God not only when things go wrong, but consistently, even when things seem fine. And that leads to a critical question. Are you only seeking God in moments of crisis? Or are you building a relationship that exists beyond the pressure? Because what you build in calm moments will determine how you stand in difficult ones. And that is exactly where this journey continues. Into a deeper level of connection that transforms not just how you react, but how you live every day. Seeking God, not only in crisis, but in intimacy. There is a pattern that many people fall into without even realizing it. They seek God intensely when something is wrong, when pressure rises, when fear becomes overwhelming. In those moments, the connection feels urgent, real, and necessary. But as soon as the situation improves, that intensity begins to fade. And slowly, without intention, distance returns. This cycle creates a fragile relationship, one that depends on crisis to stay active, one that only deepens when something is breaking. And while God meets you even in those urgent moments, there is something far greater available than a connection built only on need. Intimacy. Intimacy is different from emergency. It is not driven by panic. It is built through consistency. It grows in quiet moments, in ordinary days, in times when nothing seems wrong. It is the choice to stay connected even when there is no immediate pressure forcing you to. This is where your spiritual life becomes stable. Because when you only seek God in crisis, your faith is constantly reacting. It rises and falls with circumstances. But when you seek God in intimacy, your faith becomes steady. It is no longer dependent on what is happening around you. Think about the difference this creates. When a difficult moment arrives, you are not starting from zero. You are not trying to reconnect under pressure. You are already aligned, already grounded, already aware of His presence. That changes everything. Instead of reacting with panic, you respond with clarity. Instead of feeling distant, you remain connected. Instead of searching for direction, you are already positioned to receive it. This is why building intimacy is not optional. If you want to live with consistent peace, it is essential. And here is the deeper truth. God is not only present in your lowest moments, He is present in every moment. The difference is not in His availability. It is in your awareness. Intimacy increases awareness. It sharpens your sensitivity to His guidance. It strengthens your trust. It aligns your thoughts more quickly when they begin to drift. It creates a constant connection that does not break under pressure. And over time, something begins to happen. Your dependence on crisis begins to disappear. You no longer need a problem to feel close to God. You carry that closeness into every part of your life. Your decisions, your thoughts, your reactions, all begin to reflect that connection. But even with this growing intimacy, there are moments that can feel confusing. Times when things do not unfold as expected, when doors close, when paths shift, when it seems like something is being taken away or hidden from you. And the question arises, why would God allow that? What if those moments are not absence but protection in a form you do not immediately recognize? That is where the next step takes you deeper than ever before. When God hides you in ways you don't understand, there are moments in life that do not make immediate sense. Doors close without explanation, opportunities disappear, plans shift in ways you did not expect. And in those moments, it can feel confusing, even frustrating. You start asking questions. Why did this happen? Why now? What did I do wrong? But what if what feels like a setback is actually protection? Not all protection looks obvious. Sometimes it does not feel like being rescued. Sometimes it feels like being restricted, like something is being held back from you, like you are being delayed, redirected, or even removed from a situation you thought was right. This is where trust is tested at a deeper level. Because it is easy to believe when everything is clear. It is easy to trust when the path is open and the direction makes sense. But what about when things become uncertain? When the way forward is not visible? When what you expected is no longer available? This is where many people misinterpret what is happening. They assume absence when it is actually guidance. They assume rejection when it is actually protection. They assume loss when something harmful was being prevented. The truth is, there are moments when God shields you from things you cannot yet see. Situations that could drain you, environments that could mislead you, paths that could take you away from what is meant for you. And because you do not see the full picture, it can feel like something is being taken from you when in reality, something is being preserved. This is one of the most difficult aspects of faith, trusting not only in what is given, but also in what is withheld. Because what is withheld often carries as much purpose as what is provided. Think about the times in your life where something did not work out, but later you realized it was for your good. At the moment, it felt like disappointment, but with time, it became clear that it was protection. Now imagine how many moments like that are happening right now, without your awareness. This is why perspective matters. When you understand that God does not only guide through open doors, but also through closed ones, your reaction begins to change. You stop seeing every delay as failure. You stop seeing every redirection as a mistake. Instead, you begin to trust that even when you do not understand, there is a purpose unfolding. And that trust creates peace in uncertainty. Because you no longer need to have all the answers to remain steady. You only need to trust the one who sees what you cannot. But as this trust deepens, something else begins to rise within you. A shift in how you carry yourself. A change in how you face what once intimidated you. You begin to lift your head, not in pride, but in confidence. And that is where the next transformation begins. Lifting your head above what tried to defeat you. There is a moment in every spiritual journey when something changes within you. The circumstances may not have shifted yet. The challenges may still be present. The pressures may still exist. But inside, something is no longer the same. You are no longer carrying yourself the way you used to. There was a time when certain situations made you shrink, when fear lowered your voice, when insecurity made you question your worth, when pressure caused you to withdraw instead of stand. But now, something is different. You begin to lift your head, not because everything is perfect, not because every problem has been solved, but because your confidence is no longer rooted in your circumstances. It is rooted in something deeper. It is rooted in who stands with you. This is the shift that transforms everything. Because when your identity is no longer tied to what is happening around you, you stop reacting from fear. You stop living under the weight of what tries to intimidate you. You stop allowing external pressure to dictate your internal state. Instead, you begin to stand, and this posture changes how you experience every situation. What once felt overwhelming no longer has the same power. What once controlled your thoughts no longer dominates your mind. What once made you hesitate no longer defines your actions. You begin to move differently, speak differently, think differently. Because now, you are no longer trying to prove something. You are no longer trying to protect yourself from everything. You are no longer trying to survive every moment. You are walking with confidence. Not self-generated confidence, not temporary confidence based on circumstances, but a steady, grounded confidence that comes from knowing you are not alone. And this confidence does not eliminate challenges. It transforms how you face them. You no longer approach life from a place of fear. You approach it from a place of authority. Not your own authority, but the authority that comes from trusting that you are supported, guided, and protected. This is what it means to lift your head. It is not arrogance, it is alignment. It is the moment you stop looking down at your limitations and start looking forward with faith. And as this posture becomes your new normal, something else begins to develop within you. A deeper strength, a quiet endurance. Because lifting your head is not just about standing strong for a moment. It is about remaining steady over time. And that leads you into one of the most powerful lessons you will ever learn. How to wait without losing what has been built inside you. Learning to wait without losing faith. Waiting is one of the hardest battles you will ever face. Not because nothing is happening, but because everything inside you wants movement. You want answers. You want clarity. You want change. You want to see something shift, something open, something resolve. But instead, you are placed in a season where nothing seems to move. And this is where many people lose what they built in moments of strength. Because waiting exposes what is truly inside you. It reveals whether your faith is anchored or conditional. It shows whether your trust depends on visible progress or on something deeper. It confronts the part of you that wants control, that wants certainty, that wants immediate results. And if you are not careful, waiting can slowly drain your confidence. Doubt begins to whisper. Questions begin to rise. You start wondering if anything will change, if your prayers are being heard, if your situation will ever turn around. This is where many people begin to retreat internally. Not because they stopped believing completely, but because they stopped expecting. And there is a difference. Because when expectation fades, faith becomes passive. It becomes something you hold on to out of habit, not conviction. You stop looking forward with confidence and start settling into uncertainty. But true waiting is not passive. Waiting, when done correctly, is one of the most active forms of faith. It is the decision to remain steady when nothing around you gives you a reason to be. It is choosing to trust even when you cannot see evidence. It is holding your position internally, refusing to let doubt take over your mind. This kind of waiting builds something powerful inside you. It develops endurance. It strengthens your focus. It refines your ability to stay grounded even when everything feels uncertain. Because when you learn to wait like this, you are no longer controlled by time. You are not rushing the process. You are not forcing outcomes. You are not reacting to delays with frustration. You are anchored. And this anchoring changes how you experience every delay. Instead of seeing waiting as something negative, you begin to recognize it as preparation. Instead of feeling stuck, you begin to understand that something is being formed within you that could not be built any other way. Strength that lasts is not created in moments of instant breakthrough. It is built in seasons where you had every reason to give up but chose to remain. And as you stay in this place, something begins to happen quietly. Your faith stops being fragile. It becomes resilient. You are no longer shaken by how long things take. You are no longer discouraged by what you cannot see. You are no longer dependent on immediate answers to stay grounded. You begin to trust at a deeper level. And this is where the next challenge appears. Because sometimes it is not just about waiting. It is about trusting even when the answers never come in the way you expected. Trusting God when answers don't come immediately. There are moments when silence feels heavier than any struggle. You pray, you believe, you hold on, and yet the answer you expected does not come. Not in the way you imagined, not in the time you hoped, not with the clarity you needed. And this is where faith is truly tested. Because it is one thing to trust when you see movement. It is another thing entirely to trust when everything feels still. This kind of silence can create an internal tension that is difficult to explain. You begin to question what you thought was certain. You revisit your prayers. You analyze your actions. You wonder if you missed something, if you did something wrong, if you misunderstood. The mind searches for explanations. But the deeper challenge is not the absence of answers. It is the temptation to lose trust in the absence of answers. Because when clarity is delayed, doubt tries to take its place. When direction is not obvious, fear tries to step in and lead. When nothing seems to respond, uncertainty grows louder. And if you are not careful, you begin to rely only on what you can understand. But real trust goes beyond understanding. It is the decision to remain grounded even when things do not make sense. It is the ability to stay steady without needing constant reassurance. It is choosing to believe that something is happening, even when you cannot perceive it. This kind of trust is not built in comfort. It is forged in uncertainty. Because when you learn to trust in these moments, your faith is no longer dependent on visible confirmation. It becomes deeper, stronger, more resilient. You stop needing immediate answers to remain at peace. And this shift changes everything. Because instead of reacting to silence with anxiety, you begin to rest within it. Instead of interpreting delay as absence, you begin to see it as part of a process that is beyond your full understanding. Not everything that is working in your favor is visible. Not everything that is being aligned will reveal itself immediately. And this is where maturity and faith begins to develop. You stop measuring progress only by what you can see. You stop expecting every step to be explained. You stop demanding immediate clarity before you move forward. You begin to walk with confidence, even in uncertainty. And this confidence is powerful, because it frees you from the need to control every outcome. It releases you from the pressure of having everything figured out. It allows you to move forward with peace, even when the path is not fully revealed. You are no longer waiting for perfect conditions. You are moving with trust. And when you reach this point, something remarkable begins to happen. The things that once intimidated you no longer hold the same power, because now you are ready to face what you once feared. Receiving boldness to face what you once feared. There was a time when certain things controlled you, situations you avoided, conversations you postponed, decisions you delayed, not because you did not care, but because something inside you hesitated. Something inside you felt unprepared, uncertain, exposed. Fear does not always appear loudly. Sometimes it hides in hesitation. It shows up as procrastination. It disguises itself as overthinking. It convinces you to wait just a little longer, to feel just a little more ready, to have just a little more certainty. But deep down, you know there are things you have been avoiding, and what once felt overwhelming begins to shape your behavior. You adjust your choices to stay safe. You limit your actions to avoid discomfort. You shrink your steps to protect yourself from failure or rejection. Without realizing it, fear starts defining the boundaries of your life. But something begins to change when your confidence is no longer rooted in yourself. Because courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to move forward with something greater supporting you. And this is where boldness is born. Not from perfect conditions, not from total certainty, but from a deep internal shift that says, I will not stay here anymore. You begin to recognize that avoiding what scares you does not protect you. It keeps you stuck, and the moment you understand this, something inside you starts to rise. A different kind of strength, a quiet determination, a willingness to step forward even when your emotions are not fully aligned. Because now, your decisions are not being led by fear. They are being led by conviction. You begin to take steps you once delayed. You face conversations you once avoided. You make choices you once hesitated to make. And each step changes you, not because everything suddenly becomes easy, but because you are no longer controlled by what once held you back. This is what boldness looks like. It is not loud. It is not reckless. It is steady, intentional, and grounded. It is the ability to move forward with clarity, even when emotions fluctuate. It is the strength to stand firm, even when uncertainty still exists. And as you continue walking in this boldness, something powerful happens. The things that once seemed bigger than you begin to lose their weight. The fear that once felt overwhelming begins to shrink. Because you are no longer giving it authority. You are no longer allowing it to define your actions. And in this shift, you begin to experience a new level of freedom. Freedom to act. Freedom to decide. Freedom to move forward without being paralyzed by what could go wrong. This is where transformation becomes visible. Because now, you are not just thinking differently, you are living differently. And this leads you to one final realization. When your foundation is no longer fear, everything changes. When God is your light, fear loses its power. Everything changes when your foundation changes. Fear may still try to speak. Situations may still feel uncertain. Challenges may still arise without warning. But something inside you is no longer the same. Because now you are no longer navigating life from a place of darkness. You are walking with light, and light changes how you see everything. It reveals what was hidden. It removes confusion. It exposes what once felt overwhelming and shows it for what it truly is. What once looked impossible begins to look manageable. What once felt threatening begins to lose its intensity. Not because the situation changed immediately, but because your perspective did. When light is present, darkness does not have authority. It may exist, but it cannot dominate. And this is the shift that transforms your entire life. You stop reacting to fear as if it has control over you. You stop allowing uncertainty to dictate your emotions. You stop shrinking in moments that once made you feel small, because now you understand something deeply. Fear only has power where light is absent, and once light is established within you, fear has nowhere to take root. This does not mean you will never feel afraid again. It means fear will no longer lead you. It will no longer define your decisions. It will no longer shape your future. It will no longer limit your potential, because something greater is guiding you. You begin to move with clarity instead of confusion. You begin to respond with peace instead of anxiety. You begin to stand with confidence instead of hesitation. And this is not something temporary. This is a new way of living. A life where your inner stability is not dependent on external conditions. A life where your peace is not shaken by every challenge. A life where your direction is not lost in moments of uncertainty. Because you are no longer trying to create your own light. You are walking in a light that does not fail. And when you reach this point, everything becomes simpler. You do not need to have all the answers. You do not need to control every outcome. You do not need to eliminate every challenge. You just need to remain connected to the source of that light, because as long as that light is present, you are never truly lost. As long as that light is guiding you, you are never without direction. As long as that light is within you, fear will never have the final word. And this is the truth that changes everything. When your life is anchored in that light, fear does not disappear. It loses its power.